Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have you here tonight and really excited to have our dads groups tonight. So welcome to all the dads and welcome to all of you that are joining us tonight, including Irene and Elizabeth, which is very exciting. So thank you. I will read our mission statement. Helping Parents Heal is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assist bereaved parents to become shining light parents by providing support and resources to aid in the healing process. We go a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and evidence for the afterlife in a non-dogmatic way. Affiliate groups welcome everybody, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and allow for open dialogue. Attendance today at the Helping Parents Heal meeting is voluntary, and we are here for the benefit of learning from and sharing with other parents whose child has passed away. It is understood that our discussions are intended to be confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. However, these Zoom meetings are very healing to parents all over the world, and they will be posted on YouTube so that affiliate members who are not in our time zone can also watch. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers to allow parents to be informed about many possible ways to heal, to connect with their children, and to learn about the afterlife. The views expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Helping Parents Heal, and we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. So thank you to all participating tonight, and Mark, it's all yours.
Thank you, Lynn, and thank you for all you do to set these interviews up. Well, welcome. You've heard perhaps of becoming a shining light parent. Well, we have 7 stellar examples of that this evening. And the definition is that, understandably, most parents, after a child passes on, are consumed with grief, very sad, feel lonely, perhaps having anger and guilt and blame and so on. Again, no criticism, very understandable. However, some parents realize that their children are in a realm characterized by higher energies, peace, joy, love, gratitude. And the parents also realize that the more they're at that same level also, the more they can sense their child. And so they move toward what we call shining light parents. And honestly, some of the most amazing people I've met in my life are shining light parents. They just exude this love and caring and peace and so on. Now, that doesn't mean their lives are perfect all the time. They have down days, maybe anniversaries are a little tough, but for the most part, it's just an amazing transmutation. So you're going to learn from them this evening what worked for them, what their struggles were, and so on. To learn more, by the way, about journeying toward being a shining light parent, you can see article number 82 at soulproof.com. So I'm truly honored to run these interviews because these interviewees, like yourself, are quite likely evolved parents who volunteered for the possibility to have the human heart broken, but also to have a breakthrough, to wake up and realize who they are, why they're here, who walks beside them always. And it's just that kind of light and awareness then that can help many people on our planet. So wonderful. One last note before we start. So these fellows are affiliate leaders or leaders of the Fathers group for Helping Parents Heal. But to find out more about the Dads group, you can visit Helping Parents Heal / I think it's Dads group. Also for affiliate leaders to see if there are groups in your area, helpingparentsheal.org/affiliate leaders. And finally, caring listeners, a group of shining light parents who will talk with you, no charge, listen, share what's worked for them. They're not trained therapists, but they have been through the dark night of the soul and have much to share and will work with you as much as needed to help you get there yourself. So with that, our first person tonight is Chris Ryan. And Chris, tell us please about Sean, about his life and his passing, please.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And thanks for letting me be first, although we really are a team. So we truly are each other's wingmen, even though Andy is the one with the wings obviously in his screen. But yeah, Sean Gabriel Ryan, he was born September 20th, 1997, and he passed 23 years and about 11 months later. We're not exactly sure of the date of his transition because he was found unconscious at his home and had taken what he thought to be ketamine. He was also doing Xanax and a few other things just to try to dull his anxiety and depression. He was living in Cincinnati at the time. We got a call saying, your son is in the hospital. He's very sick and you need to get here right away. Well, we live in San Diego, so it took us a little bit, but by the time we got there, he was in ICU on life support. And it was 3 days later that we had to make the ultimate decision that no parent really wants to make. And that was that we felt that his body was shutting down and he had already left. So we don't really know. We've had some medium readings and we understand that he was in the room with us, but he was not in his body at the time. So we presume that he transitioned on the 4th of September.
And thank you. And how did you learn about helping parents heal, and how did they first help you?
Well, maybe like many families, when we got back from Cincinnati, I was in the middle of a lot of work. And so I became preoccupied. I got myself busy and I had a lot of other things I had to keep up with. But my wife, she just started doing a bunch of research, and her name is Sin Collop. She's part of the San Diego affiliate group. She found Helping Parents Heal by looking at different websites, reading different books, going to different forums. She just did all the research, and she told me after a month or so that there's a father's group. And so I checked that out and have been very happy to be a part of that group for the last couple of years.
Excellent. So what motivated you to help them work with the dad's group, and how did you know you were ready to do that?
Well, I was actually not sure I was ready to help because I was still so new on the journey. It had been less than 2 years when they invited me to be a co-leader. And I was very honored and flattered by that because I felt like I was still too early on. But yeah, I just feel it's really an honor to be able to listen to other men at a time when they're very vulnerable. And in our group, it's a time for a lot of these dads to break down where they might not have done that in any other setting. It's a unique, safe place for dads. And just about every week, we get at least one new dad. And often it's his wife that has introduced him to this idea.
Yeah, great work. So what have you learned, Chris, over the years about how you can best sense Sean's living presence?
Oh, wow. Well, I have had some interesting experiences. This is Sean here over my shoulder. That's when he was probably around 11. So he was a younger boy. That's his guitar. And that's a virtual background. But I am going to change my background. Again, I mentioned his name is Sean Gabriel Ryan. On the night that we did decide to discontinue his life support, when we left the hospital, we went and sat out on a patio. And as the sun went down, this was the background that was illuminated over the hospital. And if you can see, it's a giant pair of wings, angel wings. And we always called him our angel boy. His middle name was Gabriel. He was named very consciously because we had a hard time getting married. And Gabriel was the angel that announced the birth, the pregnancy, in the Bible of Mary being pregnant. So we felt it was a very suitable name for him. And he gave us his first sign that night. But there have been others. I've had extremely visual dreams. I've had sensations where I've felt him physically. Seems like he is able to touch or have me feel his presence, either temperature changes or just a touch. I feel him sometimes.
Beautiful. And has that developed over time for you, so you're more aware of how he contacts you?
Well, yeah, I would say so. It's developed over time, although I can't say that it's happened with more frequency. It does seem that he picks his moments, or I just need to get in a place where I'm really desperately needing contact with him. So I'm trying to tune into him, but I'll be honest, I'm not a very good meditator. One of my challenges, so getting to his vibration is a process for me.
Definitely. Yeah, one of the moms last night called it the process of sensing the subtlety of spirit, which is maybe the best way I've heard it put in a poetic way as well. Well, what have you learned that, say, 3 things that you wish other parents knew more deeply?
Well, this is good for parents, but I'll say especially for dads is to find the people who are there for you. Don't expect it to be the people you expect them to be, because oftentimes family is not very available. So I would say feel free to ask for what you need if you feel strong enough. Feel free, for me personally, I like to bring Sean's name into a conversation if it's relevant. I try not to be afraid of how other people are going to be reacting when I talk about my son, but I don't bring it up casually. I do it with intention. And just find the people that are going to be there for you, and don't be afraid to ask for what you need. I think that's been the biggest lesson for me, is to do things that are good for myself, self-care.
Pure gold. And what is your current, and this is personal, I know, belief or knowing about there being a timing and a meaning behind even something as seemingly horrible as a child's passing?
Well, we had a feeling that he was an at-risk child. We'd had him in rehab. He had struggled with alcohol and drug addiction, although we always struggled with the addiction part because it seemed like it was more recreational for him, but it just seemed like he was going down this path. He even told us on a couple of occasions, both my wife and I individually, separately, that he didn't think he would live to 24. And I just got a chill up my spine. So he must be telling me that that's right. He died 2 weeks prior to his 24th birthday. So he did leave us some evidence that he thought his time was coming. The window might be opening for him.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Very powerful. And while we're getting ready for Andy, I would like to share that so many of the children, I'll call them children, even though they may have been in their 20s or 30s, did use drugs and alcohol. And my sense, after 50 years working in different healthcare fields, is that so many of these children are sensitive, they're evolved, and the cruelty, the difficulty of life is tough for them. And so they try to numb out or try to cope that way. And of course, sometimes that usually leads to much worse problems. So,
yeah, especially if they try to get their drugs online, which Sean did. And unfortunately, they found fentanyl in his system. So we call it a poisoning. We don't call it an overdose.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. Way to be strong as a bear. Andy, you are up, please.
Thank you. I appreciate it. What a great way to share our children in this forum. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So tell us about Josh's life and passing, please.
Now, I am the proud dad of Joshua Branson Bohart. He was born on St. Patrick's Day in 1999, so he was my millennial child, and he was my firstborn, or is my firstborn child. He was born in a Catholic hospital on St. Patrick's Day. Even though I'm not Catholic, I figured that got me some points somewhere in some scoreboard in the sky. He came into the world in an emergency, and he left this plane in emergency as well. His mom, Cindy, who is the affiliate leader in the Sacramento area, we're no longer married, but still very good friends. But he came into the world in a hurry and left in a hurry. He died in a car accident on September 17th of 2019. I can't believe it's been over 4 years. Seems like it happened yesterday. And he was in a single vehicle car accident. He was speeding. He had just got a brand new Crown Victoria car. It's like a police cruiser. He loved fast cars. He loved to, just race around and do all the crazy things that young people do, even though they're told not to. He lost control of the car. We found out through various medium readings that he was trying to miss a deer, and he impacted the only tree in the entire probably block of available trees. He hit it in the exact right spot. He hit it going about 60, 70 miles an hour and died instantly. And when I tell that to people who have not gone through something like this, they look at me very strange. And what I follow up and say is that his soul was outside of his body before he ever touched the tree. And I'm glad that there was no suffering, that he went out in the way that he wanted to go out, doing something he loved, even though it was incredibly painful. Only after 4 years can I say it without absolutely losing my mind and crying. But
Sure.
that's the reality. That's what happened.
Thank you for sharing that. And by the way, there's some good clinical data that what you just said is true, that the consciousness, the soul, disembarks away from the body. So the children don't suffer as much as we might think. So it's more than wishful thinking. So how did you discover helping parents heal, and how did they help you initially?
Wow. That's a great question. I don't really remember how I found Mike. I believe it was Josh's mom, Cindy, that told me about the dad's group. I joined about 6 months. Actually, it was 6 months after Josh's passing. And I do have to say that this organization was the most effective way for me to process my grief, being with other men, crying, swearing, doing all the things that we do in that group. And at that time, the group was not very big. And it was a complete blessing that I was able to connect. And I do think it was a spirit-led thing, because I'm not a joiner. I'm not big on sharing, even though, in this forum you do. Pretty much an introvert at heart. So being in front of a group of men and being vulnerable was not my favorite thing in the world, but it was the most healing thing I've ever done.
And how did you know that you were ready to serve versus be helped?
That's another great question. I don't think I was. Mike needed some help as the group was growing. We went to weekly meetings, and I don't know if I was voluntold or if I volunteered. I don't quite remember, but it's been amazing. It's been amazing. I'm so glad I'm doing it.
Well, I'm 70 years old and I think I've heard everything. Voluntold, that's a new one on me. I like that.
That's a military term.
Yeah. So what have you learned so far? And I know it's a process, about how you can best sense Josh's presence.
Josh is an amazing communicator. In fact, on the day of his viewing, he messed with the AV system at the funeral hall. We couldn't get his pictures to show up on the monitor. He hated pictures of himself. He was always very shy. He loved to be behind the camera, never wanted to be in front of it. So he messed with the AV. It worked before his viewing and it worked after his viewing, just not during. He was messing with the lights in the room. The funeral director was beside himself. He was so embarrassed. But once we left the viewing, everything worked well. He is connected 100% with every reading we've had since his passing, and we've had a ton. And so he is incredibly communicative. He loves to give me feathers, particularly early on. Feathers, coins, little Nerf darts, like the little kids play with the Nerf. That's what we used to do when he was little. So he made his presence known very clearly early on, even though I didn't know any of it. I wasn't part of, a spiritual community that understood those things. I was raised as a fundamentalist Christian, which was a great upbringing, but they don't talk about things like that. And so as I experienced more and more, I came to helping fathers heal. And I was kind of embarrassed when I first brought it up. It's like, is this real? And I've found out in the past, 4 years that it's actually more real than what I think reality is.
And so what would be a bottom line you could share with parents about how they can sense their child more and better?
Get quiet, go deep inside. And it's either through meditation or it can be through riding a bike or running, any sort of something. Like yoga is a great way as well. When you get inside yourself and you stop thinking, and then you can hear. And I think that's the biggest thing I've learned. I talk to my son every day. I don't hear him audibly, but I get very strong impressions answering my questions. It's something that I didn't think existed before this happened, but since I know, like I said, I know it's a reality.
Well, I wish I could convey the power I felt in your words when you just paused and said, "Get quiet." It's like, way to be. What are 3 things that you wish more parents knew that you've learned, Andy?
That our relationship with our children is not over. It's just in a different form. I think First Nation have it absolutely right when they say, when someone passes, they're on the other side of the veil. We can't see them, but they can see us. And I think one of my major things in my grief was that I will never get to do this, or I'll never get to do that, or I'll never see this, or those kinds of things. And they may be true, but I'll also get to know things I never knew before. I'll have a stronger, deeper connection with my son. Yes, it is challenging. It is not easy. It doesn't come without effort, but we have a totally different relationship, where I was, quote unquote, his guide, and I was supposed to help him grow and do all those things. He's my guide now, and he's teaching me, and he's actually teaching me the things that I always wanted to know. And he and I used to talk about it. So that's the one thing. The relationship doesn't change. It just evolves. Number 2, you do not have to carry this pain by yourself, particularly for men. Men love to isolate. We like to self-medicate. We like to divert our pain so we can be strong for those that we love around us. But in reality, we're showing a weakness in a way by not being vulnerable and not sharing our emotions and not being close with those around us. We have this, at least I had this false impression that I have to be something. You don't have to be anything but what you are in the moment. And in the men's group, we can do that. And I see it in the larger group and helping parents heal as well. Everybody can emote and express what they need to. In this group, like I said earlier, is the most important thing I did for my healing, because I wasn't carrying it by myself. And that's part of my personality flaw. I do that by nature. And I've learned that you don't need to.
Was there a 3rd thing you wanted to share?
I would say the thing that I wish somebody would have told me early on was that I will be happy again. I will feel joy. And that's okay. It's nothing to feel guilty about. It's nothing to be sad about, even though that was exactly my reaction. And what's funny is the place where I really felt joy for the first time was at our conference, at the Helping Parents Heal conference. I was with my brothers and my sisters, and we were all, I mean, even though I didn't know hardly anybody other than the men's group, I felt more connected and more loved and more grounded. And I felt the energy of that place. And it was, I mean, aside from the breakaways and the mediums and all the great people that we talked to, just being in that space, I told my wife, I said, I haven't been happy in, at that point, 3 years. And now I really am. And I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel bad. And that's just part of the grief process.
Beautiful. Thank you. And then how about your belief or your knowing about there being a timing and a meaning? And you've kind of already addressed this. His car hit the only tree in a block radius. You know how, but go ahead, please.
Well, and this is the most poignant part. Everyone in our family, my wife, Josh's mom, his brothers, all knew he was going to die. We didn't know how, we didn't know when. There was that connection and that just that knowing. And we all talked about it on occasion quietly. And then after he passed, we all were together, obviously, and we all knew. His passing was preordained. And I know that that causes a lot of issues with people. And it did for me as well for a long time. But when I look at the evidence, one simple point of evidence for us was he loved to be a director. He loved filming. That was his big thing in high school. He created a storyboard of a story of a kid who bought a car, who was speeding and hit a tree and died.
God.
And that was the video he did 2 years before he died. And starting 2 years before he died, he had an unexplained anxiety where he would just like have these anxiety attacks that I had never seen before. And I wasn't experienced with that kind of thing. We are convinced now that his soul knew that his exit point was coming and his body was reacting. And now I didn't know any of this at the time, but it's only afterwards that we really came connected and we put the pieces together. My son's exit point was that September morning. And it had to happen. And it had to happen specifically for his mom's awakening and my awakening. Like I said earlier, I've learned things that I had no clue existed. Now I know what is real, and it's not what I thought was real.
Whoa, so powerful. I gotta take a breath here. Oh my God. Whoa, thank you. Awesome, my man.
Thank you.
Tom, you're up next, please. Tell us about
I signed up to follow Andy.
Yeah. Tell us about Kevin, his life and passing, please.
Sure. Kevin is I ended up with 4 S's here, very strong descriptors of him. 4 S's: strong, selfish, short-term, but also sensitive, if it's possible to have all those in one person.
Sure.
Very, very good-looking guy, athletic, fast, strong. He passed in June of 2018, just 1 month shy of his 20th birthday, after a 3.5-year battle with sarcoma.
Thank you for that. That speaks volumes right there. And so how, Tom, did you learn about Helping Parents Heal, and how did you first benefit from that group?
Much as with Andy's, my wife, researched and found Helping Parents Heal. The full story is a little bit longer than that. There was a series of very interesting connections and serendipities that led her to HPH. But long story short, she she found HPH, and as she researched it, she found that there wasn't an HPH chapter in our area at that time. We lived in the San Francisco Bay Area. The closest chapter at that time was down in San Diego, so we weren't going to be able to take advantage of that. So she started digging and researching a little bit more. I think she was in touch with Irene first, and she asked if she could start a San Francisco Bay Area chapter. So she did, and I helped. And first meeting, we had 8 people, and then we grew to more than 50 or 60 people. And then we were on our way. So, and then that led me to the Fathers Group later on.
And what do you feel like your strengths are in working with the Fathers Group?
Well, I've had in my professional career a bit of meeting facilitation training. So I'd like to think that I bring that to the party. As I was thinking about these questions, it sparked to me, though, that on a good day, sometimes I can offer to one or another dad a slightly different way of thinking about something or looking at something. Again, on a good day, maybe something they hadn't considered or something they hadn't seen that way before. And they may go away from that thinking, there's an opportunity for me to see this not only as a bad or traumatic thing, but maybe there's something else going on here. So it doesn't happen every day, but on the days it does happen, it's a pretty good feeling.
So such a powerful point. Thank you, Tom. You know, the brain is an amazing organ, but it perceives less than 1% of reality, but it thinks, it knows everything. And
Yeah.
the only thing that exists is what it can sense. So as you say, if you can find just a little opening for your mind, your inner knowing to come through and say, there's a bigger picture here, you know, let's look for the blessings. Well, thank you for that. So what have you sensed over time about how you, or what have you learned over time about how you can sense Kevin's living presence?
Well, Kevin is versatile, very powerful, and he's a show-off. So he has shown up in dozens of different ways. And, you know, I can rattle off a few different ways. I'll be way short of the total number, but he's showed up with animals. By showing up, I mean with signs. Animals, birds, dragonflies, license plates. I have a knock your socks off license plate story. One time, he even created a full ripe yellow lemon on a lemon tree within a couple of weeks. It usually takes 4 to 12 months for a lemon to sprout and mature on a lemon tree. And I had some validation of that a couple of weeks after it happened. So he's showed up in a million ways. He messes around with electronics. He responds to requests. And of course, like others here on this call, we've had some amazing experiences with mediums where, you know, anyone trying to be a skeptic or debunk these would just, you couldn't do it. They were too strong.
Thank you. Yeah, it sounds like he is an active one. What are 3 things that you've learned that you wish other parents knew and knew more deeply?
You know, again, echoing Andy, you know, your children are not gone. They're just different. And I get, you know, it's easy to forget that because we're not physically with them. And even on our Father's calls every Wednesday evening, we slip into these conversations where one or more of us will be talking about our son or daughter, and we'll forget. And it's like they're in the past. And I mean, it's a natural, you know, feeling or thing to trip you up. But then one or another of us will say, they're not gone. They're still here. And I think, you know, we have to remind ourselves of that. You know, as a parent, don't harbor grief. Don't get stuck in it. You have to vent it. Sob, cry, get in the fetal position, beat a punching bag, hit golf balls, whatever works for you, but vent the grief. You're not honoring your child by holding on to the grief. It's exactly the opposite of what they want. I feel confident in saying that. And then the other thing I would say is, there's so often there's blame or guilt connected with a child's passing. I think part of their reason for trying to teach us something is for us to learn how to forgive. And forgive could be somebody else, a doctor, someone in an accident, or it could be forgiving yourself, because a lot of us do think we are to blame for what happened. And I think you have to punch through that and get past it. So forgive.
Punch through it. Yeah, that's something we haven't heard from moms say. I love it. Yeah, that's a guy's way of dealing with it, isn't it? So what's your belief or knowing about there being a timing and a meaning to a child's passing?
Well, sometime after Kevin passed, I was in a conversation with a medium, and she told me that his transition was written. And then I went on to learn a little bit about soul contracts. And we don't have enough time on this call to go into those, but I invite anybody who's on the call who's not heard of it to dig into that and research it a little bit. And when I heard about it and I began to learn about soul contracts, it seemed to fit so well with what had happened with Kevin, and then what had subsequently happened for us, for me and for Lainey, my wife, that it started to click for me. So I started to believe, and still do, that Kevin went before us so that we could both learn about the spiritual side, and we could participate in things like HPH and helping fathers heal. And one hopes to help others. So that's what we came to believe about the timing of Kevin passing. I'm not sure if that fully answered your question.
Yeah, it does beautifully. We have just a little time, and you piqued my interest. You say, do you have a license plate story that knock our socks off?
Let's see if I can condense it. I was asking Kevin for guidance about, should I hire this person or not? And I'm on a long road trip, and I'm driving. I'm looking for some sign from Kevin, and I'm not seeing it anywhere. And I had a 2 o'clock call with the candidate to sort of see if we were going to move forward or not. And at 3 minutes to 2 o'clock, a car passes me by, and the license plate on that car said 570 YES. 57 was Kevin's varsity football number. And so if you read it that way, it's 570 yes.
Yes.
And it happened at 3 minutes to 2 o'clock, which was 1:57. That car was one of 14 million cars in the state of California. And that car drove by me at exactly 1:57 with the specific answer to the question I had posed.
Yeah.
So if you line it all up, there's too many coincidences there to dismiss. So it was again, I was telling you earlier that he likes to show off, and that was a perfect example. He loves the attention. He's loving this right now, I'm sure.
Well, thank you very much. This is wonderful.
Thank you.
Mike, you're up. Please tell us about your Dylan, his life and passing, please.
Yeah. So Dylan Michael Edwards was a very charismatic, good-looking, intelligent, accomplished percussionist. And he was born in October 92. He came into town for Thanksgiving in 2016. And before Thanksgiving, he and I had a meeting together, and we talked about his addiction. And he said, you know, if I do it again, I'm going to die. He actually said that. And so Dylan, he's a typical story, common story. He was in a motorcycle accident. He messed up his leg real bad. They put him on opioids, which he abused. He'd already been dabbling in other things. So when they cut him off, he had a business colleague turn him on to heroin. So he ended up doing heroin for 5 years. The third time he went into a treatment center, he put himself in. He wasn't forced. He wanted it. So he was sober for 6 months. And he relapsed the very next Monday after Thanksgiving. And because he had gotten healthy for 6 months, he no longer had a tolerance built up, and it killed him.
Yep.
And there was no fentanyl involved at all. It was just, just heroin. So as far as, I'll jump ahead real quick, as far as the exit question, because of that conversation we had and what happened the following Monday, apologize for my voice. I think, and also like you said before, I think for some of these guys, some of these kids, life is just really tough. And I think he had just burned himself out. So he chose his exit point, Yeah.
Okay. Well, so how did you discover Helping Parents Heal and how they help you?
Well, that was kind of interesting. What I did was, as soon as Dylan passed, I did what's called intellectualizing grief. And so I launched into research about afterlife, out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, astral travel, mediumship, you name it. And somewhere along the way, I came to discover that there was a group reading session that Kat Bailey was giving. Well, I had gone to some meetings from another parent grief group, and I saw some things lacking, particularly for the fathers. So I had already started putting together a website for fathers, a closed website. So I went to this group reading with Kat, and Dylan came in. And after the meeting, I called her up and I said, I just wanted to get your idea on this. This is what I'm doing right now. And she said, well, there's an organization called Helping Parents Heal, and they recognize the need for the very same thing. And so that led me to Elizabeth, and we knocked it around, and, Helping Fathers Heal was born. So, yeah.
Nice. And then when did you know or feel, because you started the dads group, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Tell me how that came about and how you help dads.
It's funny because like our very first video Zoom meeting had 5 people in it. And I think Chris Myers was one of the originals. And from there it took off. We started making, tweaking how we did things. And instead of having one meeting a month like the previous place I'd gone to, we went to weekly. So because to me, once a month is not enough. And so we did weekly, and from there it just grew. It grew, and we had a really great promotion with Helping Parents Heal. Our best recruiters are the spouses. So it's just grown, and now we're at I think we're around 450 members in 13 countries.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So what could you pass on to parents about what they might try that you've learned works as far as sensing Dylan's presence?
Dylan is just pretty in your face, and I don't have to meditate to connect with him. It just happens. And one way that he connects with me is through numbers. And I'll be walking through a room, I'll glance at a clock, it's 11:11. And then I get in the car, start the car, it's 11:11 or it's 1:11. And it happens over and over and over. And I just tell him, hey man, hope you're doing okay. Thanks for the sign, you know. So we've had several signs. The biggest one was actually something that I learned was called an apport. And my wife found a very small, very raw stone in our shower. And she brought it out and showed it to me. And we went to the Helping Parents Heal conference. And I showed it to Suzanne Giesman and said, "So what is this?" And she goes, "Oh, it's called an apport." And I go, "Well, what are we supposed to do with that?" And she said, "Be grateful."
Hmm.
And you need to know that he probably had help. He probably couldn't have done that on his own.
So for those who are watching and will be watching, share
Mhm.
more, please, about what an apport is.
Well, an apport, my understanding is an apport is a physical manifestation from the other side. And the other type of apport is when you hear about objects being moved. So that's kind of what's going on with that.
Okay.
It was a shocker. I mean, we were just blown away. But we've had various irrefutable evidence such as that, and from readings and from signs, and it's just keeps coming. And like some of these guys have said, I mean, it's too numerous. I don't have time to go into all of it.
Nice. So what
It's
are
very
two things?
reassuring. Mhm.
What are some things you've learned, Mike, that you wish more parents knew and knew more deeply?
Well, first, I'd probably tell them to realize that there are no rules to grief. And I think people, especially spouses, need to realize that we're all on different points of our grief timeline. So then it's not like spouses are matched up, you know? And so I learned that the hard way. I think also that I've got a couple of things that I've developed over time and come to believe in my heart. One is that at any point in time, we're exactly where we should be, learning what we're supposed to be learning. I also say that I'm going to do the best. I'm going to do the best to live the rest of my life, so that when I'm in front of Dylan again, he's going to be proud of how I spent the rest of my life. And the last thing is, above all else, acceptance and patience are the keys to realizing we don't have to understand what's happened. And once I finally embraced that, that's when I actually began to heal. It was with acceptance.
So I mentioned, I think, to Chris starting off, way to be strong as a bear. That's a Native American song and saying that someone, even when facing adversity, can be strong as a bear. And boy, I sure feel that energy with you. Awesome. So what can you share with others, please, about your understanding of there being a timing and a meaning behind something as apparently tragic as a child's passing?
Well, I think it goes back to what I said before about his exit point.
Right. Okay.
And so I think that was his time. And once again, acceptance, I fought that for a long time. And once I accepted that, through all the research I'd done and meetings and all that, things just got better for me. Hadn't been perfect, but it got better. And I think that one of the reasons, like if you look for a silver lining in the tragedy of losing our kids, if you really dig deep, you can find things that resulted from their deaths that are very positive, like forming Helping Fathers Heal.
Yep.
Like Andy joining, and Chris being there. And I mean, we are, like everybody, like they were saying earlier, we're a really tight group and very supportive of each other. And I've had massive support from these guys. It's been just awesome.
Yeah, I know in the years I've been around you, I've seen a great increase in your peace, especially peace. You're still pretty angry, tough, struggling, wrestling with it. So Way to stick with it. Super job, man.
Thank you.
Jeff, you are up next, please. And tell us about Austin's life and passing.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. Austin Gilbert Cottrell, our firstborn. He was born November 29th, 1995. He passed away a couple weeks after his 24th birthday. He was a kind, fun-loving, caring, intelligent, just a fun kid to be around. And I still call him a kid, even though he was 24. I mean, he's always my kid. He's the oldest of 3 children, and he really excelled in school. And he was our first one to graduate college, obviously, and it was a big milestone for him. One of the things he wanted to do was become a certified financial planner, and he investigated a lot of different companies, and his dream company was Vanguard. And he was able to get a job offer from Vanguard in the Scottsdale, Arizona office. So we've got a young man. We live in Wisconsin, and he's going to make the move across the country and go to work for his dream company and start his career. So it was a very exciting time in his life. So we moved him out to Arizona in March of 2019. Well, the following December, his younger brother, Kevin, was graduating from college, and Austin wanted to be part of the celebration. He loved all family activities and events, and he wanted to be there to support his brother. So he flew home the day of the graduation, and we had a little gathering at our house. We had just moved, the house the kids grew up in. We moved just a few months before Austin had moved to Arizona. So we moved to a more rural setting, and it was in a neighborhood that he was a little bit unfamiliar with. And that evening, after we had our family gathering, he was going to go out to the college bars with his friends that he hadn't seen, because he'd been away for 9 months. And so they were going to celebrate. Well, he had got on a plane. He had to wake up very early to fly in that day. So before he left the house, we always make sure everyone is safe and has rides and where they're going to stay. Said, should we come pick you up? And their decision was they were going to take Ubers. They were going to go, and then they were going to stay at their friend's house just off campus at one of their houses. So we're like, you're sure? We're all set. Well, that night, the kids wanted to stay out, and Austin was feeling the effects, I'm sure, of alcohol and just a long day of travel. And he wanted to just come home. He didn't want to stay out anymore, and that was shortly before midnight. So he just booked an Uber drive by himself and hopped in and gave him our address at our new house and was just going to come home. Well, the Uber driver ended up dropping him off in a different part of the subdivision down a wrong street. So it's nighttime, it's dark, he's unfamiliar with the area, and he gets to the first house and knocks on the door, and they end up calling the police and they don't let him in. So we don't know exactly what happened from there. We assume he either got scared, called the Uber driver back, he got picked up again, went to a different part of the subdivision, and they dropped them off at a wrong location for a second time. And now this is December weather in Wisconsin, so the temperatures are dropping. That night happened to get down to 5 degrees. And the kids don't dress, they weren't planning on being outside. They were just going to be, in and out of cars. So no winter coat, no hat, no gloves. And he's on a road, looking for help, goes to several homes with no help or no one there to answer the door. He actually called a third Uber driver, and they were en route to pick him up, and his phone died from the cold weather. And, we still wish today he would have called us. We don't understand why, but I think that'll probably get into one of the future questions we're going to discuss. And so he ended up taking off on foot because he's cold. And just through a long series of events, he ended up 4 miles away. Everything that he went, he tried to flag down cars. Cars didn't stop. He was at other houses that turned him away. And he got to a final house about 4 miles away from our home. And at this time now it's 2:30 in the morning. And there was just a lady there home, and I'm sure she's scared. A strange man knocking on the door at 2:30 in the morning. And she didn't let him in, but she called the police, which thank God she did. So we knew where his last location was. So that's what happened that evening. The next morning, my wife and I woke up. I actually had to go into work. We were having an acquisition of our company, and I texted my wife when I was done. I said, well, I'll pick up Austin on the way home. So I texted him and I got no response. So I texted my other son and said, do you need a ride? And I haven't heard from Austin. And he's like, well, Austin came home last night. And we're like, no, he didn't. And that's when panic set in. So we called the police, we called hospitals, everything we could find, trying to locate him. And then they did say there was a disturbance in our neighborhood. So we checked it out, the description matched that it was Austin. So we knew that he was on foot. And then we did get a description at the other house that there was a police report at, and we knew it was him. And they matched footprints in the snow. And we had an all-night search. We were unable to locate him. We're still holding out hope. They called off the search that evening, and that's the longest night of our lives. Obviously, we didn't sleep a wink. And just in the middle of that night, I just got a feeling, and I told my wife, I said, I know where he is. And I just had a picture of this woodlot in this field. And I said, I'm going to go out there. And I did, but I couldn't walk out in the field. Once I got out there, I couldn't go out there. So I waited till daylight, and one of my best friends went out with me. And we went out to the field. And just as we were going to go out there, we got a call, and the police said, they don't want you to go out there. They're bringing, they had a track last night and they want to follow it, and they don't want anything disturbed. So again, I think that was helping us and helping me not have to find my son like that. So going back home, probably an hour later, the police came to our door and confirmed that indeed Austin was found, and he had passed from hypothermia.
Oh my. Well, this could have been the one I've been feeling today. Yeah, I mean, every one of them is senseless and tragic and horrible. I'm so sorry. So how did you find out about helping parents heal, and how did they first help you?
Well, I'm like the other dads. My wife played a major role in finding. Um, she did a lot of the research. I took the typical man approach. I'll be fine. I'll put a tough face on and I'll gut it out, and I'll be just fine. And that doesn't work. So my wife turned me onto some books, which helped. The first book actually that I read that she recommended to me was Joe McQuillan's book, My Search for Christopher on the Other Side. We started watching some documentaries, anything to find help in healing. And we came across Craig McMahon's documentary, Life to Afterlife. And they were interviewing the parents from Helping Parents Heal. I remember Elizabeth and the Hollahans, and just listening to their stories. And we're like, we got to check out Helping Parents Heal. So that's how we found Helping Parents Heal, and continued to go through that. And then again, my wife pointed out to me that there's a Helping Fathers Heal group as well. So I checked that out. And again, the first few meetings I just remember joining, and I couldn't speak, and if I did, I would break down. And but I just soon realized this is a group that I want to be part of. The guys were so accepting, so caring, the stories they were sharing, some of the evidence, the validations. I just craved more and wanted to be part of that group.
So, the pain and just shock is still present. Obviously who wouldn't. So you feel like one of the things you share, because you can really relate to the dads, it's more recent and so tough for?
I think so. I think we try and relate. to the other dads, share our stories, let them know they're not alone. We've gone through similar things, try and use compassion. We talk about, especially when we get new dads, we just try and shower, throw some love at them and, let them know they're going to be okay. Look to some of the dads with more experience, some more time under their belt and what they've experienced and gone through, and remind them when we started on this journey, we were all messes at some point. We couldn't speak. We would ugly cry every day, and that's okay. But, just let the guys know you're not alone, and we understand.
So how is it for you sensing Austin's presence?
I'm grateful that Austin is a great communicator. We've had some incredible signs from Austin, um, some several medium readings that have been just incredible validations with things that have happened only that we know, and things that have happened after Austin transitioned. So we know he's still here with us. And I also had a dream visit, and Austin's been in my dream several times, but I had one distinct dream visit that I still can't describe in words. The only way I tell people, I could just feel it and I knew it. And I can't come up with the proper words because it was him, and I was able to hug him. I was able to feel him, and it was just a very powerful experience.
Well, matters like that are considered ineffable. In other words, whether it's perceiving creator or perceiving your children of past, yeah, it is tough to put into words. That's very understandable. What are some things that you've learned, Jeff, that you would like to share with other parents?
Well, first and foremost, our kids are still with us. They're with us, by our side all the time, and they can experience what we're going through. They can experience family gatherings, family milestones, because we've had those validations in readings. Even a funny story in one of the readings, our daughter Bailey had sat in with us on one of the readings, and Austin kept talking about this pair of earrings. And my wife and I are trying to play it off because our daughter was just about to graduate high school, and we bought her a pair of diamond earrings for a surprise gift. And if you know my son Austin, he liked how I spoiled this the secrets when he was younger. So it was typical Austin. He just kept pushing it. She's like, no, we have to go back to the earrings. We have to go back to the earrings. And we finally had to tell Bailey that we had bought her a pair of earrings. And you could just sense Austin grinning in the background on that one. So I would say number one, our kids are with us. They still experience things with us. Number two, you're not alone. There's, moms, dads, there's so many of us out there with similar stories that are willing to help. And I think you need to find your special people who you're comfortable with, who understand, and you can let it out. And some of the dads have said it already. I think one of the biggest things I've learned in the Helping Fathers group is to be vulnerable and let yourself be vulnerable. And that's how you heal. Let it out. Don't hold it in. As dads, we try to be the strong protectors. We got everything figured out. We're going to be okay. But like I said before, that doesn't work. To heal, you have to let it out, talk about it, share your feelings. And then third, keep your child present. Include them in everything. Say their name, talk about them, talk to them, talk out loud. That's one other validation I had in a reading. I think Mike Edwards was telling us in one of our group meetings, talk to your kids out loud. And I never did that. So I started doing that. And we went to a gallery reading shortly thereafter. And Austin came through, and the medium walked right over to our table and looked me straight in the eye and said, I have a message for you, Dad. Austin hears you. Keep talking to him.
Nice.
It was just, my wife said she thought I was going to fall off my chair. I had goosebumps and I was trembling, and it was just, one of those experiences where it was like a direct message from my son.
Sure. Those goosebumps have also been called truth bumps. Yeah, so share with us, please, your views on this question of whether there's a timing in a meeting to even something as horrific as a child's passing.
Yeah, based on the way my son passed, I struggle with this. It's one of the things I struggle with, and I think the reason I struggle with it is I don't want to believe there was a reason, or I don't want to believe there was a timeline. But when I was telling my story, and I left out numerous other things, there was a series of events. Every single thing that could have went wrong went wrong. You change one event in this whole series of events, and it really makes you wonder if that happened the way it was supposed to happen. The other reason, I know there's some truth to that I need to dig deeper and find out, is my wife had premonitions that our son was going to die, and we believe our son did as well. He had come home for a quick visit a couple months before he had passed, and we had a very serious conversation. And Austin, he could talk to anyone, and he confided in us that he had been thinking about death. And of course, we're like, we're thinking suicide, or we didn't understand what he was talking about. He's like, no, I'm not thinking about hurting myself. He goes, I've just been thinking about dying a lot lately, and I'm very anxious about it. And this is 2 months before he passed. And then he also told us that same conversation that he felt he was becoming very spiritual. And looking back at that, we feel that between my wife's premonitions, her waking up in the middle of the night, for sure something happened to him, to Austin having those feelings, that I think between the two of them, they knew something was coming.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, when you said you feel like maybe part of you doesn't want to believe there was a timing behind it, in a way that could be a level of denial too. Like if you accept that, you're afraid you're going to feel the pain more, when in fact it might yield more peace. And to your point about all the things that had to fall in place for that outcome, that is depicted so well in a movie called The Curious Case of Benjamin Buttons with Brad Pitt. And they go through that, all the things, and for all big events in our lives. So people may want to watch that. Well, thank you very much, my friend, for sharing that. Very powerful. It's going to help a lot of people. God bless.
Thanks. Thank you.
Warren, you are up. Tell us about your Nolan, please, his life and his changing worlds.
Well, thank you. I'm grateful to be a part of this. I'll show you quick. That's my son Nolan.
Oh my God.
He's a sweetheart. And we had a amazing life together. Happy kid, funny as hell, like really funny. He had a maturity about him that didn't match his age. And yet at the same time, he was also young for his age. And Nolan was a musical kid. But yeah, he wrote a ton of music. Anyway, so he passed in his sleep when he was 15. And he had no symptoms, no history of health issues. It's called sudden unexplained death in childhood. It's basically like SIDS. And at the time, I think there were like 74 teenagers his age in the whole country that happened to. And the day before he passed was actually an incredible day. Like we were all together. Sheila and Nolan were laughing in the pool. I was making plans to go fishing. Nolan and I watched a stupid movie together and stayed up late giggling. And I even laid down with him going to bed. He had just turned 15. And I guess I probably started snoring, and he's like, "Daddy, are you gonna sleep here tonight?" I was like, no. I said goodnight. That was the first night I think I ever did not say I love you when I said goodnight. But yeah, so I went fishing the next morning, and I even had asked him if he wanted to come fishing with me the next morning. And he thought about it, and I was like, "You don't have to go, if you don't want to go." And sometimes he would come with me, and he's like, "I think I'm going to stay home." And so the next morning I woke up, and I had the thought when I woke up to go fishing, like for sunrise. I had the thought of going to ask Nolan again. And I thought, no, he gave me his answer. And so I went fishing. And so that's where I was when I got the call. My wife had, he was teenager, and he would sleep till 11 or 12. It was in August 18th of 2020 in COVID. And so school had evaporated. He was having all kinds of great fun with his music. And he is getting ready he had been finishing, and he was a self-taught musician, singer, songwriter, arranger, producer. He learned to do it all. And he finally started uploading songs. He just uploaded his first song to go live to the world. And that was 4 weeks before he passed. And then it took 6 weeks back then. So he passed 2 weeks before his first song went out.
Well, you can bet he's playing on other stages. So
Yeah.
share with us, please, how did you learn about helping parents heal, and how did they help you?
That's the same old answer. My wife's the finder of things. I used to say, like, she would find all the opportunities for Nolan, and I would schlep him, windshield time, and not that she didn't drive him, but yeah, she found Helping Parents Heal. We'd also watched the documentary, and my wife's we really leaned towards each other when Nolan passed. I know it can rip a family apart. But so I found the group thanks to my wife, and thanks to Mike for starting the group. And it was, everything I didn't know that I needed. My wife and I's approach to grief was, we made it our full-time job, our top priority. We did as little work as possible for as long as possible, and we got as much help as we could find, and then we kept looking for help, and I'm still looking for help. And that's it takes a lot of help.
Sure. And what can you share with other parents about how when you help others, it helps you heal?
I mean, that's how it works with humans. The most fulfilling thing for a human, I don't care if you're a billionaire or you don't have two nickels to rub together, the most fulfilling experience for all humans is helping others, contributing to others, making a difference in the lives of others. I said one day right after Nolan passed, it hit me. We had people at the house, and I just turned to one of our friends and I said, it was like a download. I said, all we really have is loving each other. I mean, and so now I find as many opportunities to say that, and it comes out like the previous sentence, like that's the most fulfilling experience for anybody. I refer to people who aren't in our situation as muggles sometimes, like the Harry Potter reference, but it's the same for us. It's one of the most helpful things to pull us out of a funk. I was in a funk the other day, It's been 3 years and 3 months, and I called one of the dads, and yeah, it's I learned so much from we all learn from each other. You know, our favorite topic in the group call, we're always changing and learning how to do our call, and we try to come ready with a topic in case a bunch of dudes can be crickets, which happens sometimes. It's pretty rare. But my favorite topic is, who's struggling with something? I mean, and then we're off to the races, and I hardly have to do anything because the other dads in the group are helping the person who's struggling. It's an amazing place of unconditional love.
Beautiful.
It's a very special because it's men, and in the normal non-grief world, which is so grief illiterate, men don't really behave that way typically.
Yeah. So what have you learned? How can you sense, Nolan, that other parents might try?
Well, the things that share the closest bond with Nolan was he and I love to talk about music. Nolan was obsessed with how does the song put together. And I mean, he wrote like over 80 songs, and he did like 52 a cappella arrangements, and most of that was 11 and 12 years old. Like so to answer your question, I go back to working on his music, and so when he passed, his intention was to release his music, so we have leaned into doing what he intended, and so we continued to release Nolan's music with the help of Nolan's communities. So we've also found it really helpful if you can include others in honoring your kid, then you have all this healing built in because there's all this witness built in. People are talking about him because it's around the project, and it's very uplifting, not just for us, but for the people who are helping. We started a music festival and a nonprofit named after Nolan, and now we're picking up again, doing more of his songs, and we look to include his friends in it. So a topic that you had in common with your kid would be my advice. Like what was your closest bond with your kid? Go indulge like crazy in that topic. If you like riding motorcycles, go be around motorcycles. If you like fishing, go fishing.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Getting on that same wavelength, because one thing we've learned from the Soul Phone Project is it appears that everything about the child in this case, except the human body, continues. The personality, the preferences, the loves. So it makes perfect sense. Yeah, do what they love so much because they still do. You know, it didn't change. So what are a few?
We need help talking about our own kid. So when I go do the thing that bonded me with Nolan, not only does it help others talk about him, but it helps me talk about it too.
Sure. Yeah. Triple win. So what have you, what are some things that you've learned that you wish more parents would?
I mean, the whole, I wish more people were okay with feeling feelings, because boy, does that come to bear in grief. The dads that come to the group who are still trying to do the programming of being stoic and strong, and they quickly learn that it doesn't work, and they get all kinds of help, and redefining like what it means to be a man. is being vulnerable and kind and loving, and so yeah, surrendering and letting others help you. I wish more people. I'm surprised how many people only have one source of help. I just can't even. I needed so much help. I also was we were very fortunate to have a grief counselor early on, a really good grief counselor. And to me, it was like having if you're going to go to a foreign planet where the laws of physics don't apply, wouldn't it be nice to have a guide? And so that's been really helpful for us.
Excellent. And share with us, please, your beliefs or knowing about there being a timing and a meaning behind all this.
Most of our life with Nolan, there were a lot of times where we were like, how is he doing this? We saw him perform songs that neither of us saw him rehearse, and we lived with him. And so we're certain that Nolan's been here before, and that he's even done the whole fame thing, that he was some kind of big performer in a previous trip here. And it made sense to us because if you were hung out with Nolan, you'd watch. He loved to make great music and put on the best show possible, and he was such a cheerleader for others, especially anybody who was taking a risk and sticking their necks out. But he had no interest in like notoriety for himself. And Sue Frederick was particularly helpful for us with understanding, that he'd been here before, and yeah, it's still hard to grasp. Like I know that he's there and he's here and he shows up all the time. But then again, most people walking around, we're telling ourselves a story about what we think, how we think things are going to happen. And so I kind of remind myself that I'm learning to be comfortable in the things I don't understand, and to stay open is really important.
Good. Very good. Well, we come full circle because you start off talking about how very mature he was for his age. And that's one of the signs of a more evolved soul who has been around the block a few times and comes back out of love to teach the rest of us. So thank you for sharing all that, Warren.
Thank you.
Chris, you are up. Tell us, please, about your page, her life and passing.
So Mark, Chris had another commitment and he had to leave. So we'll have to reschedule him for another time.
That was Chris Ryan that had to leave. I'm here.
Oh, that was Chris Ryan. Okay. Sorry, Chris. Sorry, other Chris.
Yeah, boy, 6 tough acts to follow here. So yeah, my Paige Allison Myers, she was born November 18th, 1994. So we're coming up on her birthday this week. She was the most focused, driven, fierce, competitive person I ever knew. She was incredibly smart. One of my very early memories with her, she was just a few days old, and she's our first child. My wife was taking a nap somewhere, happy to have me dealing with the baby, and we were sitting together on the couch, and I was holding her out like this, and Paige never slept. as a baby. She just never slept. And she just locked eyes with me, and we just looked at each other for a long time. And that's when she got me. But that was a moment that has stuck with me ever since. Paige was a high achieving kid. She was very much into science, and she was diagnosed when she was 9. Very long story, but she was diagnosed with a genetic disorder called Friedreich's ataxia, which gradually took her mobility away. And we always, well, I did. There was no treatment, no cure for this issue, and it was a life-shortening illness, and I always expected her to precede me, but maybe in her mid 30s to early 40s. But she dealt with things like using a walker in middle school, as she lost her really ability to walk unassisted by 6th grade. She was in a wheelchair in her senior year of high school, but it didn't affect her cognitive ability, and it certainly didn't affect her fight. She was determined to do what she wanted to do, and she got into college, went to Case Western Reserve in Cleveland, very competitive school, did really well. She graduated with a degree in systems biology and wanted to be either a genetic counselor or in public health, and to help other people dealing with problems like she dealt with. And she started a disability advocacy club. Wow. At the university. She volunteered on the Cleveland Rape Crisis Hotline. She tutored high school kids getting ready for the ACT. She was absolutely fierce. And since Warren did it, I'm going to do it too. When she graduated, we took her. Oh, I guess I can't share. We took her to New York for a graduation gift, and I took a photo of her. We went down to Wall Street and took a photo of her posing next to the Fierce Girl statue that used to be standing right in front of the bull at the end of Wall Street. It's now actually standing across from the New York Stock Exchange building. And when I go to New York, I like to visit that little statue.
I just made you a co-host, Chris. If you want to share that, I feel like that's really important.
I'm going to put her up. Yeah, it's this is my wallpaper on my iPad as well.
Oh my goodness!
So this was my girl. She had that big smile, with all the crap she had to deal with. She was just fierce, and I had to get a picture of her next to the Fierce Girl. So
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So she started her first day of graduate school also at Case Western, and she was going to go for a master's of public health. She came back from that. My wife actually saw her the morning that we think she died, because we found her 3 days later wearing the same clothes. But she had apparently fallen out of her chair and had a cardiac arrest while fighting to get up. And so she left us at 22. It's been a little over 6 years. So that's Paige.
Thank you for sharing that. Wow, obviously an evolved one. So how did you find out about helping parents heal, and how were they able to help you initially?
I found it through reading. Just actually several months before Page transitioned, I had read Evan Alexander's first book, Proof of Heaven, and was just fascinated by that. I really related to him as a science based person, similar religious background as well. And I had read the Raymond Moody books when I was a kid. I was always interested in that. And so I immediately went back to those books and started reading on afterlife and these sorts of things. And I think one of those books, there were references to resources, and Helping Parents Heal was one of those. And I was very attracted to the message. So that's how I found it. And, and like Mike said, I was one of the early ones on when we were trying to get the Helping Fathers Heal group started back when we had, single digits. And heck, I remember a meeting or two where it was just Mike and I that showed up to keep each other company. But, it's really rewarding now that we've got 30, 35, sometimes 40 guys showing up on a Wednesday night.
Awesome. So what have you learned, Chris, about how you can best sense Paige's presence?
That took a while. That took a while for me. And what ended up getting through to me, there were a couple times really early on where I heard, I'd be talking to her and I heard an answer, but it came too quickly for me for it to have felt like it came from me. So I had a couple things like that early on, but it took probably 2 or 3 times, but I realized at one point that she was putting songs in my head. I would wake up in the morning with a song in my head, and it was never a song that I would seek out. It was generally something from my childhood, probably something my mom or dad had on in the car when we were driving somewhere, So it was an older song that I knew, I recognized, but it's not something that I would really go for. And first couple times it happened, I thought, that's really weird. Why am I getting these? Then I started looking up the lyrics on those songs, and I would find some sort of message there that was meaningful almost every time. So I started writing those down so that I can go back to them. I haven't been getting songs really over the last year or so, but she has started, and I'm convinced that it's coming from her. I get a tingling on the left back side of my neck. So it's either a serious medical condition that I should have looked at, or it's Paige.
Yeah.
But it generally comes when I'm thinking about her or when I'm talking to her.
Well, you have such an analytical mind as an engineer. It's interesting that she knew to contact your non-dominant hemisphere. Yeah, good job. So what are some things you've learned, Chris, that you wish more parents knew, but like to pass on to them?
Well, grief is not linear. That's for sure. If any of you are old enough to have had a spirograph as a kid, the kinds of drawings you make with that's more what grief is. It's definitely not a linear process. Something else that is important to me is I think it's fine. It's okay to ask big, tough, gnarly questions. This is a crucible that we've been through. To come through it and just say, oh, yeah, it's okay. No, it's not okay. And it's fine to go through all the things that you need to go through and ask the big, tough questions and really, accept being shaken to the core, being shattered, and having to put yourself back together slowly over time. And the other thing is that there are safe places, and in this case, we're talking about a safe place for guys to come together. it is a group. We've got a group like none other that I've been involved with, and I've done years and years of small group facilitation in different contexts. Um, and this group is totally different from any other group. The depth of sharing, the openness, the vulnerability, to have a group of 30 plus guys come together, and you'd be shocked, maybe some of the women would be shocked at all the I love yous that are floating around that meeting. And I was lucky enough just a few weeks ago to spend a weekend in Cape May with Warren and one of our other brothers from this group. And it was just an awesome time. And again, it was just like a love fest. And it's, we've got this bond in common, but it's formed some really deep friendships and attachments.
Yeah, I
So.
can see that. And the group is open to new people, though, and welcomes them
Absolutely.
and has the
Absolutely.
resources to help. Awesome. So how
Yep.
about the question of there being a timing and a meaning? How do you look at that to Paige's passing?
That's where I'm gonna maybe be a little bit more contrary to everybody else. I don't find a meaning or timing to it. I don't feel the need to do that. One of the things that I think about in connection with this, or concepts like soul planning, is that it's, to me, and this is part of my it's okay to ask big questions. To me, it's an attempt to answer the problem of theodicy. Why do bad things happen to us if there's a good God out there? And there are so many truly awful things that happen in the world that I just don't think there's an answer that I can grasp to that question. And I'm okay with just not worrying about it. I know that my faith in God and ultimate reality has actually been strengthened through this process. It's expressed in a much different way. I know that Paige is there. I know where I'm going back to when this is over. I just don't know the point of why we're here going through all this crap. And I kind of view some of the things like soul planning as being very similar to, or exit points, being very similar to, well, that's God's plan, or other rationalizations to try to make us feel better, like there's some reason or control. And I just haven't found it yet. Nothing that resonates with me.
Yeah, well, thank you for your honesty. I know there's a lot of people that would agree with you. Oh my goodness. Well, guys, we're so over time, it's not funny, but I couldn't stop. I mean, every one of you got in a role in different ways, and how do you stop that? There's just so much there, so much love, insight, wisdom, pain. Thanks very much to all of you for sharing that. Thanks for your kids to bringing you to this point. And I just stand in awe of this organization, and so proud to be a part of it. Lynn, can you
I've got
talk any
nothing to
better than I
add.
can at this point?
No, I mean, just the unconditional love and support and compassion you guys have for each other just blows me away. So thank you to Mike Edwards for helping Fathers Heal. I know we have to clear our Wednesday every week in this house just so that Jeff can be a part of it. And you're all amazing. So thank you.
Yes. Keep
Thank
up
you
the
for
great
leading,
work,
Mark.
guys. My pleasure. Take care, everyone.
Thank you all.
Have a great
Night.
night,
Bless.
everybody.
Love you guys. See you.
Thank you
You
guys.
too.
Love you all.
Love you guys too.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. See you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Sure
See?
that.
Don't get too comfortable.